When we talk about the northeast of India, the truth is that we in the mainland of India, we in the mainstream media hardly talk about it at all. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. And today on this special broadcast, we attempt to change that. A new book that is looking at a resurgent Northeast, written by an IAS officer who spent two different stints in the Northeast, is a labor of love. It draws the attention of the rest of India to a part of the country that has been shamefully neglected by mainstream media and has not got the attention it deserves in our national discourse. The Act East policy of the Modi government is attempting to change a lot of that. But many of us have assumptions, have cliches, and sometimes have complete ignorance when it comes to the splendid, beautiful, geopolitically strategic, and intriguing northeast of India. As I said, now a new book called A Resurgent Northeast looks at these narratives of change. How has connectivity, technology, a matrilineal society, very, very distinct cultural mores, and of course, the strategic, delicate positioning of the Northeast today located these eight states within the rest of India, and how do they look at the rest of the country? Let's introduce our guests on this very, very special broadcast today. Joining us up front is a well known entrepreneur from the Northeast, Tage Rita, who actually built her business on kiwis and kiwi wine. It's good to see you, Tage Rita. Welcome to the program. Also joining us is Ashish Kundra. He's, of course, the author of the book that we're talking about, A Resurgent Northeast, looking at these narratives of change, a senior bureaucrat who writes the book as a labor of love, having spent two different stints serving in the Northeast. Also joining us is very senior RSS leader and also public intellectual whose opinion pieces we often read in newspapers like the Indian Express, Ram Madhav ji. Ram Madhav is the senior leader of the RSS, but has also been somebody who has been in charge of Northeast affairs for the Sangh and for the BJP. It's good to see you, Ram Madhav ji. Namaskar. And also joining us is Hekani Jakhalu. She used to be a lawyer and then she became the first woman MLA in the Nagaland Assembly and is today an advisor to the government of Nagaland. So really a very, very interesting panel. Welcome everybody. Ashish, let me actually start with you. Why this book? You track from Jawaharlal Nehru to Narendra Modi, changing concepts also in an understanding at the center of how the Northeast should be looked at. You speak about what you call Nehru's utopian idea that if you just leave sort of the Northeast alone, it will somehow manage itself and we leave it in splendid isolation. And you call that
I think my
extremely.
connection is.
We can hear you. Okay, we lost Ashish there. So let me bring in Ram Madhav ji at this point. Ram Madhav ji, you're somebody who has spent a lot of time in the Northeast. Tell me what actually stands out for you in all the years you spent looking at the Northeast.
Thank you, Barkha. Most important thing is this distinction you started off with, that there is a mainland and Northeast is probably out of that mainland. It's a non-mainland periphery. That idea has been completely obliterated now. It is as much a part of so-called mainland as probably a Tamil Nadu or a Gujarat or any other state in this country. That is one significant change that has happened in last many years, I would say, but especially ever since Prime Minister Modi put extra emphasis on government of India's attention to the northeastern region. I have seen it distinctly in during 6 years of my in chargeship for BJP there. Not a single month used to pass without a few cabinet ministers, cabinet members of Prime Minister Modi's cabinet visiting one or the other state. In fact, in a given year, there used to be something like 250 to 300 ministerial visits. I can tell you, Barkha, as far as I know, because I have studied Northeast before I went there, I have never heard of so much of attention, so many ministers visiting, going. This is all because of Prime Minister Modi's emphasis. That has certainly changed the sentiments in those parts of the country, and they feel more closer to Delhi today than they used to be. They used to feel more closer to perhaps Bangkok and other places because of the neglect of Delhi. not because
Yes.
of any reason from their side. I see that as a very distinction that has happened in last many years.
Okay, that's a very important point that you make. And let me bring in Ashish now, who I said is the author of this new book on the Northeast, Resurgent Northeast. And Ashish, your book opens with talking about how Jawaharlal Nehru had a utopian idea about the Northeast, that if you leave it in splendid isolation, it would somehow manage itself. And how there's been a distinct shift over the years, in particular with the Act East policy of the Modi government. What is the biggest change that you sense for yourself between the two stints that you've spent there?
See, the change was at multiple levels. One, infrastructure, B, connectivity. Third is the aspiration of people and their entrepreneurial spirit, which was non existent at that time. And I think, lastly, the approach and mindset towards mainland India. So now there is a sense of belonging, there is a sense of openness, and a lot of factors have contributed to this change and shift. And Northeast is very much now on the rise. It is resurgent. There's no denying that.
And what is the biggest assumption of your own assumption? Like, you spoke very interestingly in the introduction of being this Punjabi, rambunctious Punjabi who goes into the Northeast and finding it completely culturally different from how you'd imagined. A lot of times our own stereotypes about the Northeast are challenged. So, Ashish, what was your big stereotype that you found challenged when you first went there?
I think the first thing which strikes you when I went to Aizawl some 20 years ago was the preponderance of women in marketplaces, in offices. They are all over, which makes you wonder where are the men. And then see men driving taxis, and it was very fascinating. This economic mobility of women, their entrepreneurship, their acceptance of society for women to take leadership roles. I think what was missing at that time was women's entry into politics, and now that is also shifting. And second was women's entry into the pulpit. So these two pillars are where women were missing, but I think the politics part has, and you got Hekani on the show, who's a testament to that change.
So let me ask Ram Madhav ji before I come to Hekani and Tage Rita to also the same question. What was the one thing that you did not know about the Northeast, Ram Madhav ji, before you started to spend time there? Can
Of
we
course,
unmute Ram? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
as General Secretary, I started my political career with Northeast, no doubt. I used to have, because we were in the RSS and we used to pass, not a single year used to pass in RSS without we passing a resolution on the situation in Northeast. We used to assume that Northeast was full of insurgency, problems, anti-India sentiments and all. But to my utter surprise, when I actually went there, started working leave Assam aside, but the other states like Nagaland, we went and started working with the local parties like NPF and other parties. We found that the sense of belongingness, if you may say that, that pride in being an Indian is as strong in the, at least in the political establishment there in those areas, as it I used to see in my state or in other states in the country. It was certainly a big relief and big realization to people like me that here is one area which is as strongly, probably patriotic, as strongly with the country as any other part of the country. That's why I initially I raised that point, that we sitting in Delhi and elsewhere, we sometimes use this vocabulary, we are mainland and they are not probably mainland. That
Yeah.
creates a kind of a gap between and that whole idea of we and they will start there. So I realized that there is no such something like nothing. There is nothing like that. And I must tell you, I don't mind admitting it on camera here, that some of the best leaders that we got for BJP in northeastern regions were from the local parties. So they were very happy to join hands with BJP and work with us, a party which is supposed to be, outside terminology, Hindu nationalist or at least a nationalist party. There was no reservation, no resistance, no opposition. Instead, they worked closely with us. So that was a very pleasant experience for me when I went there.
And I think so much has been said about both politics and women that let me bring in Hekani before we lose the network to her again. Hekani, what made, if you can you hear me, Hekani? Just wave at us if you can hear me. Just wave if you can hear me. No, she can't hear me. So let me bring in Rita instead. Rita, tell us a little bit about your own journey. How did you get into deciding to become an entrepreneur, that to building an entire business based on kiwis and kiwi wine? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tage, Rita.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you so much, Sir Ashish Kundra, for remembering me. A few days back, we spoke over WhatsApp. His new book. I was so curious, and then I didn't know where to get, and then finally I ordered, and it's coming to me soon. And also, it's a dream for me to sit in front of Barkha. Like I used to see you. I used to see you as a young college girl in the TV, and then really like we used to admire you a lot. And even now, um,
Thank
like
you. Thank you.
when I told my family that I'm going to speak in front of Barkha, then everyone was wishing me good luck. So now coming to my work as an entrepreneur, see, I come from a farming family. My father was a farmer, and I grew up in a village, and this one I was very close to all these farming activities, and I studied agricultural engineering as I grew up, and I was employed and working in a state government department, and yeah, and then I was settled with a family, and then me and my husband together we had this idea of having a winery because a lot of kiwi fruits in the year 2014-15 were rotting on the ground. And then I went on to a self-research kind of thing on meeting the farmers, going to the orchards and seeing like the fruit itself rotting on the ground without market linkages. And then there came this Arunachal Pradesh. We came across state wine policy. It's called as the Arunachal Pradesh State Wine Policy 2015, which was framed uh, uh, during the time of our present deputy CM. He was the agriculture minister that time. So that policy, the good policy of the government motivated us to take up this winery. And then that's how we started. We launched the brand in the year 2017. And since the time we launched the brand, like I was received with a rousing reception, I must say, because my entire community here in Zero Valley and Arunachal Pradesh, they were so happy. And then, and this was so unexpected. And then also during that time, I met Sir Ashish Kundra. I was invited to one Chief Minister's conclave. And that was the time I spoke my mind. Sir gave me an opportunity. It was hardly 5 minutes time. I took around 15 minutes on the stage. I was still not done. And then like so many officials, so many delegates were sitting on the dais listening to me, and then I got connected to even to Niti Ayog. That's how things got rolling, and then yeah, still,
Yeah.
and even today, like my winery was visited by one official from the Ministry of uh, Minority Affairs. He is Muhmit S. Bhatia, IS officer, and then
Yeah.
that's how it keeps me moving. Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, so listening to you, I just feel like small things can make such big differences, and that's the whole point. Uh, Let me, before I bring in Ashish, go back to Ram Madhavji. Ram Madhavji, you made a very interesting point about how the BJP has drawn some of its best leaders from the local parties, and all these is, for you also, it was a masterclass in the sort of patriotic spirit. What do you think people in the Northeast are the most hurt about when it comes to the rest of the country? What is the one thing they feel disappointed? Is it the sort of sometimes the racism they have to encounter when the younger people go out to study or work? Is it just the neglect in the media? What is the biggest disappointment?
You see, I'm happy to know that Mr. Ashish Kundra started this book with the experience of the early years of our independence. What happened was he called it probably rightly as a utopia, Nehru's utopia. What happened was we used to have two very important officers serving in the entire Northeast, Warrior Elvin and Nari Rustumji. These two were instrumental in shaping the Northeastern policy under Nehru. And their categorical view was, which was supported by Nehru, that you should leave Northeast intact. Don't try to bring them closer to rest of the country, because they are distinct, they have distinct culture, they have distinct lifestyle. So let's not interfere.
Yeah.
While yes, their distinctness needs to be respected, but distinctness is there in all over the country. The whole country is distinct in its own way. What happened over the last few years was a greater emphasis, and so much so that Nari Rustamji and all were given orders not to build roads in Northeast. So there was a deprivation from development. There was no avenue for people to our friend has done wonderful work in fruit wine industry today. There was no such encouragement, no such scope. Only effort was to somehow show to them that we care for your life, but that was a backward life. So from there, so much has happened now. Now, I must tell you, Barkha, British, for their own selfish interest, you can say, during Second World War time, built 26 airfields in Northeast. 26. You know how many were operational after independence? Hardly 4. From there today, at least 16 airports have been operationalized. Longest bridges were built. Connectivity has been developed. A lot of economic incentives are available to the people. That is the story, from a very reticent approach to very proactive approach of encouraging them. And yes, the point that you are making, let me end by saying that in spite of these best efforts, we still have certain experiences in Delhi and elsewhere of people ill-treating our brothers and sisters from the Northeast, ridiculing them, sometimes making fun of them. That certainly hurts. And I handled Kashmir, Barkha. I must tell you, it hurts people of Kashmir also when you put them to a patriotism test every evening.
Yes.
So those things do hurt people, but luckily today, you get a lot of support for people from Northeast. Today, sports university is coming up in Manipur. Manipur is famous for sports. You have had Olympians from Manipur, all Northeastern states. All that encouragement people are getting. So definitely there is more happiness, more connect with Delhi and rest of the country today.
I must thank you, Madhav ji, for speaking up for the ordinary, regular people of both the Northeast and Kashmir, and such an important point that you make about, the kind of broad strokes that are used sometimes by the rest of the country. But Ashish, let's pick up on connectivity. In your book, you write even today about, we're seeing some incredible images, but you also talk about areas where you yourself had to drive for hours on end, then get onto a ferry, how women, for example, who may be pregnant, sometimes do not have any sort of immediate access to medical care, how connectivity is at the heart, actually, of the development of the Northeast. That's the first point. And Ramadha makes a very important point, which your book starts with, how very early Nehru had this idea of splendid isolation, leave the Northeast alone, and how that actually stood between the Northeast's sort of modernity and where it stands, very different from where it stands today. How has connectivity changed the Northeast in your opinion?
See, when I joined Arunachal Pradesh in 2016, there was not a single airport in the state. And today, there are 3 civilian airports in Arunachal Pradesh. You can imagine it's a period of just 7 years. And that's the scale, speed of change which is transforming connectivity in the Northeast with the outside world at one level. Secondly, within the state, there's a river systems which are crisscrossing the entire Northeast. Because Brahmaputra and Teesta, they are the 2 large rivers. Then there are tributaries, and that's what creates a gap between one part of the state from the other, and that's where these ferry systems were started. But even that has changed. So within the same span of time, while I traveled on that ferry, as you said, where cattle, cars, and humans used to travel together, and now it is a bridge, and it takes just 5 minutes. It's a breeze to cross the bridge across Brahmaputra, which used to take 1 hour. And in some seasons, the ferry would get stuck, and then you'll wait, and then some people will kind of take it out, and so it was a huge challenge. And for all the aged, infirm, and for the pregnant women, it was the biggest thing. Apart from that, there's no economic opportunity. If I'm producing kiwis, how do I sell it if I can't take it out of the state? So I think that is the heart of geography was a curse for the Northeast, which has been bridged by changes in connectivity.
We finally do have Hekani with us, and she can finally hear us. Welcome to the program and the conversation, Hekani. My question to you is this: I want our audience to know that if I'm not wrong, you used to be a lawyer. You went outside of India to study. You came back. You were a lawyer. Then you gave it all up, and you became the first woman MLA in the Nagaland Assembly. And now you're an advisor to the government of Nagaland. And I want you to talk a little bit. Ashish's book and even Ram Madhav ji have been speaking a lot about the next generation. What made you, someone like you, join politics to start with? Give up a professional career and join politics.
Yeah, hi Barkha, and
Hi.
hello everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this time to talk to you all. So just for the record, um, my result was declared first, so that made me the first MLA. But this is the first two of us. We are two women who won these elections. So, but this is the first time that Nagaland is seeing women MLAs. Since its statehood. So it's been a very historical win for women in Nagaland. Yes, as a young girl, I aspired to be someone successful, and that's how I decided to study law, go to the US, and finish my studies. And while I was trying to really kickstart my career in Delhi. Um, that was the early 2000s, and then we had lots of young people from the Northeast migrating from the Northeast to the mainland. Like, you have already talked about mainland. So that's how we used to see Delhi as mainland. And then we used to, because this was happening because of unemployment problem, and those I used to encounter many young girls and boys, but especially young girls, and that used to also really worry me, like what is driving our young women and young boys and to Delhi and to other metropolitan cities. And that made me decide that I should. And there were, of course, many incidents that made me quit, but that was one of the main reasons why I decided to quit my profession and decide to come back home to Nagaland, start an organization called YouthNet. And for 17 years, I've been working with young people, and everything was from the NGO perspective. But I thought it was time that I get into a bigger platform to make sure more policy interventions are made for young people. Their voices are heard at the policy level. And here I am.
Fabulous. But can I ask you something before I go back to the rest of the panel, Hekani? How difficult or challenging is it to be a woman in the Northeast? Ashish's book talks about the paradox that at one level, many things are easier for women, the all women markets, how he wondered where the men were, but how traditions might still hold women back. It's a slow process of change. Is it a contradiction? Are some things easier for women in the Northeast and some things more difficult?
See, I can speak for my state first. Yes, in general, I think women in the Northeast have more equal status than mainland India. But in Nagaland, when we look at everything, everything we see, women have equal access to many things. It's just in politics, and when I say just politics, it's not just politics because politics defines everything. So yeah, so. In many ways we say we are equal, but as long as women are not in the highest decision making body, then we still are not there. But both of us, with this win, we hope that the voices of women are heard.
Yeah, and let me get Ram Madhav ji on it before coming to Tage, Rita, and Ashish. Ram Madhav ji, since you are in politics, right? And this idea of no women at the very top and a slow process for women to enter even the assembly, for example, in Nagaland. Why is that? How do we understand this contradiction when Ashish opened by saying, he wondered where were all the men because it was such a women-dominated culture otherwise? How do we understand this contradiction?
Oh, yes, this is a big dichotomy there. In fact, states like Meghalaya are matriarchal societies. Women take lead in economic life, social life, family life, everywhere. But somehow, in the entire Northeast, not just Nagaland as one state, entire Northeast, women remained a minor participant in the political activity. See, out of the 8 states, we did not have in last 75 years, as far as I remember, not even one woman chief minister. At least in other states, in many cases, at least for short term or whatever, we have had women. Today, we have some states which are run by very powerful women also. But somehow, Northeast women could not rise to that level. Having said it, that situation is changing, and Nagaland's example of 2 women becoming MLAs this time is really a very encouraging thing. I do remember that in the last election also, in 2017 also, very few women candidates contested, but they could not win. But otherwise, in other states also, situation is not very different from it. Finally, from Tripura, we have a woman MP who is a minister now in the central government. Assam always used to have 1 or 2 women as representatives. So this is one area where we need to do, much more. We need to definitely work more, encourage women more in Northeast in politics. Otherwise, social, economic, in other walks of life, women are very much in the forefront, very progressive. Even in music industry, for which states like Meghalaya and Nagaland are very well known. Some of the very popular music bands are women-led bands.
Absolutely. Now, we have a very interesting question, Ashish, coming up for you from one of our members. What does the panel think of tourism's role in the furtherance of the region's resurgence? Because at the same time, you also need to be sensitive to ecological challenges, and also a salute to Tage, Rita. That's for you, Rita, for your entrepreneurial spirit. The question, Ashish, is this. You've had other sort of countries which are very, where when countries have remained protected for very long, they're very slow to open up. Bhutan is an example. So when Ram Madhavji talks about how the Northeast was kept deprived, as it were, of urbanization, development, connectivity, how do you ensure today that as the connectivity comes, you don't actually ravage the region in other ways? It is one of the most beautiful parts of the country. How do you ensure that balance?
Yeah, you see, Northeast can never become a destination for mass tourism. It is not a Goa. So it is for experiential tourism, and there are very fine examples in Sikkim, for example, where there are homestays around sanctuaries or forest reserves. In Arunachal, there is an eagle nest sanctuary which is outside the eagle nest sanctuary. There is a resort which is run by the local tribe. They act as scouts and guides and all of that. So the idea is that if we are able to harmonize the goals of environmental protection, preservation, and marry tourism, ecotourism with that. So it's not as if you want to build, large concrete monstrosities, but you want to have something which is in harmony with nature, because that is integral to the tribal way of life. The compact between the tribal and forest is age old, so that cannot be broken.
I just saw on my screen, if we can actually bring that up, there's Feroz Rehman, who actually writes, I'm from the Northeast, and I must say the present government treats the Northeast like a mainland India. The insurgency has died down, and now we see roads and bridges, right? This is somebody from the Northeast saying this. I want to take this to Ram Madhav, and I take this to you, Ram Madhav ji, because in Ashish's book, there is a talk about the shadow of AFSPA. How it has become, it has been a big conversation, but today it's not such a live viral hot potato topic. And I want you to look at this idea of the insurgency and the security challenges. You've looked at both Kashmir and the Northeast, so you have some experience in this. So I want your perspective on this.
Firstly, about tourism, I want to say one thing, Barkha. Northeast tourism potential should be exploited fully. This whole discourse of tourism versus environment is a very old discourse, I must tell you. We have developed enough mechanisms in government, in legal system, through ecological, active NGOs and all, to ensure that tourism doesn't really destroy ecology, environment of any given area. That should not be, they two should not be pitted against each other. In fact, that's why we are depriving Northeast of great tourism potential today. I must tell you, Darjeeling, if you see, Darjeeling is actually a part of Northeast. It was a part of Sikkim, but which was given away to the Britishers in exchange for something else by the rulers of Sikkim. Doesn't Darjeeling attract so much tourism today? Is it destroying ecology today? No. So that debate is a little old. Today we should actually push for more tourism. Government of India used to have that scheme of allowing LTC pass holders use air services to go there. No, such encouragement we have to make. Huge potential that gives lot of money to people of Northeast. Having said it, on the important question of insurgency, large parts of Northeast are today free from that problem. Largely, they are free. There are responsible governments, those who were at one time holding weapons in their hands. Today, they have given up that path, joined the political mainstream. They are running governments today. So most terrorism infested or insurgency infested states used to be Nagaland and Mizoram. Both are largely free of it. Some are having certain agreements. I think the way forward for those states should not be, at least those states should not be seen from the prism of insurgency anymore. Whatever insurgency today we have, some remnants of it you see here and there is because of, like Kashmir, we say, always we have a neighbor who is responsible. Yes. Here also, we have a neighbor who sometimes promotes some small activity, but otherwise they are very free now. That should help develop economic activity there, help tourism there. Northeast should not be now bogged down by the discourse on insurgency.
Okay, we have just a few minutes left. Let me get Tage Rita, who's been listening to us very patiently. Tage, do you have a dream for yourself and for your homeland, for your part of the country that you want everybody else in the country to understand? One thing you'd want everybody else to know.
Okay. So one dream that I have about my work is to have state of the art world class winery, where just like Ashish Kundra sir had earlier said, a lot of it has a lot of potential on tourism. So I have been to US last year. I was invited by the US Department of States to come for a women's mentoring program. So there I've seen how the concept of this tourism can be economically viable, and then a lot of empowerment, lot of employment, which can contribute to the society, to the community at community level. So likewise, I want to have a state of the art winery, for which we have started the infrastructure work already. And then yes, uh, to the people of my country India, I would like to say that I've always tried to chase excellence throughout my life. And then I always say excellence can be chased from any part of the world. It's just a matter of opportunity. And for me, coming up to this point of time, it has been because of the all-round support that I got right from the beginning. And in the coming days, I would expect and seek a lot more love and support from all over the country.
That's lovely. Hekani, can I ask you to just add to that, because we missed you in large parts of this conversation. We were talking, Madhavji was talking about the stereotyping of people from the Northeast, lingering racism that still exists in pockets of the country, but otherwise so much love, for example, for the sporting icons, for the music icons. So those bridges are being built. But, as someone who has lived both outside of the Northeast and in the Northeast, do you still feel stereotyped?
I don't think so, Barkha. For me, in fact, let me just, because we don't have much time, I want to talk about this organization that we started in 2011 called Young Leaders Connect. And the whole purpose of starting this organization was to create a platform for young leaders and achievers of the Northeast to come together. And 2021, we celebrated our 10th anniversary, and founding members are Mr. Kiran Rijiju. We have two chief ministers, Mr. Pema Khandu, Mr. Konrad Sangma, Baichung Bhutia, and hordes of other achievers from the Northeast. And when we started, we were all young. So we called ourselves Young Leaders Connect, but now we have renamed it to Northeast Leaders Connect. But the whole purpose behind this organization is, yes, people from the Northeast being discriminated, it's real. It's not. It's real, and we also wanted to make sure that we don't want to play the role of a victimhood. all the time. You know, we don't want to be crybabies. It was time that we got together, whoever was doing whatever in whatever field, to come together and just also make sure that our voices are heard, because that is important, and make sure that people know that people from the Northeast are as good as anyone else. And so yes, we do have many programs where people organize programs for the Northeast, but we have our annual conclave called the Young Leaders Connect, where we make sure that it's Northeast homegrown organization, where we get people, you know, from not just from the Northeast, from mainland India also, so that, you know, there's people to people, there's connectivity, connection, and heart to heart relationships. And I think over the years, the past 10 years, it's working, and I'm happy that the founders were visionary enough to bring this far, and we'll continue to do the work that we started. Yeah.
More power to you. Ashish, I'll just close with you. You know, I think you quote Sanjoy Hazarika in your book to talk about how sort of migration has always been such a hot potato issue. But today, the Northeast has gone from being a place or a region that receives migrants to also a place that sends people out into the rest of the country. So if there's just one thing that you want to understand, you've also spoken about the generation gap, about how the older generation may not be happy with a certain kind of westernization, a certain kind of modernization. Those are tussles, I guess, of all societies everywhere, the intergenerational clashes. If there's one thing you want to leave the rest of the country, you know, a message from the Northeast that you carry with you at all times, what would that be?
I would just say that it is the most pristine and beautiful part of the nation. In fact, I have traveled to Srinagar, I have traveled to Gulmarg and all these places. In fact, when I went to Gulmarg, I must say I was a bit disappointed because I'd heard so much about it. But having worked in Arunachal and traveled to Tawang and beyond, the kind of beauty, you know, you get rhododendrons in the wild, you see yaks strutting around on the road. It is, and the misty mountains, it is a magical and mesmerizing sight. There's so less that our people know about such a beautiful land that we have. It's very fashionable for people in Lutyens, Delhi to talk about, okay, I went to Vietnam and I tried this, I went to Thailand, I went to all these places. But there's far better places and people. They're so hospitable and warm. They're culturally so diverse. I think it's time that we started to know more about them. In fact, our students should know more about the Northeast. It's a pity that in our curriculum, so less is known about the Northeast. You do a dipstick survey anywhere in the metropolitan cities, chances are people don't know even the capitals of the northeastern states. That's the tragedy of the so-called mainland India.
Absolutely. Ram Madhavji, I'll give you the last word before we close. Politically and culturally, and I think Ashish is absolutely right. If you did a dipstick test, most people would fail on the capitals of these states. How do we bridge these gaps? How do we ensure a greater integration of culture, of politics, of imagination, as it were, at the end of it?
Oh, yes, that is the key word, imagination. You know, in the government, we used to tell our friends in the government and all that don't call Northeast a gateway to Southeast Asia, call it the hub. Why I'm saying is, Northeast, those 8 states are abutted by 5 countries, Barkha, you know. 5 countries. There is no other region in the entire country which has borders with 5 countries. Imagine the market potential. Imagine the potential for the wines that our friend produces to be exported. If only you connect through roads. Product from there can go right up to Indonesia by road. That is the potential I am talking about. You know, nowhere in Asia do you come across golf courses in the midst of tea gardens. You will find them in Northeast. You will get lots of golf players there as tourists every year. From Japan, you will get 5,000 people to play golf. So the potential is enormous. The vision has to be like that. We have a donor ministry. The ministry should have a vision which is very grand. You need to connect with the whole of Southeast Asia, Bangladesh. These are all big countries, 160 million people in Bangladesh. You don't imagine the size of the market. But Bengal benefits not Assam or Northeast. So the vision is the challenge, but this government has that vision, I'm sure. That's why so much effort, so much encouragement, so much is happening. Much more can happen. We initiated projects which are going slow, but that will certainly change, transform Northeast in a very big way in the coming years.
Well, thank you for that, Madhavji, and thank you, Ashish, for your book. But in the end, I must say, think big, dream big for us in the media, report more, travel more to the Northeast. But also, let's also keep in mind the small individual dreams, which are very big for individuals like Hekani and Tage, Rita, which mean the world to them, and maybe create an enabling environment where those dreams are fulfilled. More women in politics and the world-class winery that Tage, Rita that dreams of. Good luck to you, and thank you very much, Ashish, Madhavji, Rita, and Hekani. And to our audience, thanks as ever for watching. See you tomorrow. We started Mojo right here in this basement. Just 4 people, 4. And now we're about to hit our first 1 million subscribers. So this is to say thank you to all of you for your support, for your respect, and for your encouragement. We've always gone to where the story is. During the pandemic, when television's big anchors were hunkered down in their studios or at their homes, we hit the road. We traveled from Delhi to Kerala, covering 30,000 kilometers in a small car, reporting from inside ICUs and inside slum tenements. Whether it's flash floods or war zones, we've always put our boots on the ground. In fact, we're just back from Punjab, tailing the Khalistani fugitive Amritpal Singh. And through all of this, we have always put you, the people, first. In an age of partisan polarized media where most journalists are either chamcha ya morcha, we believe the story is sacred and the truth of the story is what matters. And now as we get ready for the next step, we need your help. Become a Mojo member and get first access to all our big interviews. Get a chance to ask our newsmakers questions. Get a chance to write and report for us for both our website and our channels. And also, interact with me and my colleagues directly through AMA sessions. Literally, ask me anything. Click on the join now right next to the subscribe button, and yes, also subscribe if you haven't yet, and become a Mojo member for just 159 rupees a month. Hope to see lots of you in our community. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.